one of the most well-read researchers who has a deep understanding of the globalist master plan of anybody I've ever talked to, because I've done exhaustive, ongoing, deep research, and Alan's one of the few people that I can actually routinely learn something from, and we always have great banter back and forth as we basically integrate our information together. He's with us for the rest of the hour. There's so many world news issues, so many things happening. I know we've got callers holding. I will get to you with Alan, those that are holding at least. If I go through those calls, I'll give the number out again for other folks to join us. In fact, here's the number, 800-259-9231. But we have all of these incredible economic implosions that have been designed. I made Obama Deception more than 2 years ago, broke down everything Obama would do, and it's as if it was prophecy. It's not. We understand the blueprint. We understand who these puppets are. Fall of the Republic, Part 2, a year and a half ago. Alan Watts in that. Incredible. Breaks it down even more detail. It's really the Obama Deception Part 2, but it's called Fall of the Republic. Those are DVDs, by the way, available at Infowars.com. You may know all about this information, but your friends and family don't. They're ready to hear the truth. More and more of them are. Now is the time to give them the truth. The fact that my show has gone from being off and on between 50 and 100 affiliates over the years, it moves back and forth, the stations are bought and sold and things, to now gaining 3 affiliates, big, large stations in large cities, larger media groups, not the big giant Clear Channel, but others below that, the next tier down, are putting me on the air is because they realize their children have no future. I've talked to some of these program directors. I've talked to some of these station owners and network owners. They now know we were right about this. They now know the world government is real. I mean, here I am on the cover of Talkers Magazine in March, keynote speaker this year. Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, folks like that are going to be there. They say fastest growing radio show in the country, rewriting the media paradigm. Now, my point is not to brag about my success. It's to point out the truth is starting to really get some purchase. Purchase when you're climbing up a mountain. We're starting to really get some toe holds, some finger holds to be able to really get out of this ditch we're in. I know the globalists are not invincible, but they are impregnable and invincible if you will not research the facts and face the full horror of these eugenics madmen and their master plan. You are handicapped. I am handicapped mentally by not facing just how wicked they are. Now, I've covered a lot of news today, but I want to bring up to Alan Watt first, and then we'll get into some of the more contemporary news with him. Press releases by CERN, where they admit they created a quark gluon plasma, a particle of it by the speed of light accelerating lead together, which in their own calculations they admit could destroy the planet Earth, but they still did it and are preparing to do thousands more tests. They did create it. It weighs a centimeter sugar cube size, would weigh 40 billion tons, or many times more than the heart of a sun. It's close to black hole mass level. They go on to describe the unique material is 100,000 times hotter than the sun and denser than any known object other than a black hole. Now, before they started doing these tests, top physicists came out and said this thing could sink to the center of the Earth, then start pulling mass in, might grow for a year, 20 years, they don't know, depending on its size, and then suddenly you wouldn't know anything until it went to its next division and its next level of mass, and the whole planet would be imploded, just like in the last Star Trek movie that came out a year ago. They're throwing this in your face, and while Alan's talking, we'll show that clip of the planet being imploded behind us. They're coming out with open-air genetically engineered species. They've got this new super E. coli that is a super mutation and highly infectious and toxic and resistant to antibiotics. Meanwhile, we have now many years in Europe and the U.S. of live viruses being sprayed on the E. coli, on the rotten meat they feed us, so they can still feed it to us. Top scientists said it's a live vaccine. It will give rise to super mutations of E. coli. We drink E. coli feces in the aspartame, a chemical weapon. If you don't believe me, folks, just search manufacturing process aspartame. I mean, I could go on for hours of how the globalists are pell-mell trying to destroy the creation, claiming they're trying to protect it, writing countless volumes about how they believe they're going to merge with machines and become God. They may have all the power, issue all the currency, but they're power mad like Caligula and are probably going to destroy the earth. Alan Watt, what are we facing? Why are they attempting to one-up each other on who can destroy the planet?
It's difficult to know, Alex, if they're really planning to do this kind of thing, or are they telling us they have this technology to terrify us even more into a state of abject terror? Because we're in the age, remember, of terror creation, and this is part of terror creation as well. And no doubt that they have all of this technology and probably had it for an awful long time. Whenever they discuss to the public by the media that they're working on something, it's generally obsolete long ago. They've had it for many, many, many years. So I think part of it really is to add to the tension and the fearfulness in society in general. Because with most people, you understand, who don't follow the real news, they follow the standard news, they do believe what they're told, and that fear acts upon them. And they turn to government to help them and look after them like children. And that's the intention of fear creation. And I really think this is part of it, too. They've had this technology, I'm sure, for many years. Yeah.
Well, Alan, expanding on all of this and looking at what the globalists are up to, clearly they are approving things. They are rolling out GMO systems. And I've talked to the top scientists that were involved in developing many of these systems. They admit they don't even know how this stuff's going to mutate. Or are you saying that this is a split-off technological civilization and that they're more advanced than we know?
Well, going back to big planners, people who took part in shaping the culture that we've lived through in our lifetime, who was born long before us, the Bertrand Russell said eventually the elite will be almost like a separate species. Well, I think technically they are, because you see, they're given access to very high technologies and sciences, not the lower type that we're all used to, not the stuff that comes out in popular science. And I think their whole ability to defeat virus and the bacterium in the system is using a different technology altogether. They're certainly not stuck on penicillin and so on, as we are. So they're not bothered about it. They're immune. They're immune to most of these deadly diseases. And part of the payoff they give the lackey politicians, the higher politicians, is to get in on inoculations of their family and themselves with the real stuff. The real stuff that will, one shot probably will stop all bacterium from taking off in your system. Instead of going after individual bacterium, they'll kill every deadly type of bacterium before it starts to take off in your body. And so they've had this for an awful long time. Back in the 80s, for instance, in the US, Canada, and the British Commonwealth countries, the same year, I think it was 85, 86, the government suddenly just stated that all politicians and families and the higher bureaucrats of the country would be given access to full medical treatment in high technological military establishments. And I thought, well, why is that when they've got the best hospitals elsewhere for the public and all that? And I knew something was up then. And I remember when different outbreaks hit Canada, the politicians, for instance, the flesh-eating bacterium suddenly hit the country. And one of the politicians in the federal government came down with it. It transpired that he was given shots in his arm, and in his leg, and that's where he got the flesh-eating bacteria. And the same article said his wife and daughter also had it to a minor degree, and they both had it in their arm. So they were given shots against this stuff. The general public weren't. And you always find one person in maybe 10,000 who'll get a more live bacterium.
By the way, Alan, we saw that 2 years ago when it came out that Merkel and the government officials were being given a special, quote, clean vaccine. Then we learned in England and the U.S. they have special medical divisions that serve them, and they're given something else than us. So clearly this is going on.
And also, too, remember when Lady Diana was on the go doing her partying across the world, a reporter was allowed to follow her for 2 or 3 weeks, and he saw her lifestyle, and the promiscuity was incredible in that class of being. And he asked the one question towards the last few days, and he said, aren't any of you worried about getting AIDS or venereal disease? And he said there was a stunned silence. They all looked at each other like he was crazy. Well, and I figured out, I said, because they've all got the real shots that stop all of that. They don't get these things like we do.
Well, that's right. Science, and more of this is being admitted, that there is a breakaway civilization under national security. And now we know that it wasn't just H.G. Wells pre-1900 writing about atomic weapons. We now know there were books written in the 1850s about atomic weapons, and it really wasn't just Max Planck in 1900 that developed the idea. And then we see the stealth helicopter with the fake bin Laden killing crashing. They now admit they want the whole military to go drone and robot, and they'll have robots working on the drones and the robots where humans won't even be needed. That's why they call it the end of history, the end of humanity, why the future doesn't need us.
Mm-hmm, that's correct. That's all part of that. And towards the end, all of the big writers, from Charles Galton, Darwin, all the way down to the present time, the United Nations talk about the need to rapidly reduce the population. Rockefeller, in his last major world speech with the Lucky Gene Club, as they call it, said the same thing. We need rapid depopulation. So this is the time now to start bringing out the killer bacterium, which will affect the general population. We've already had an outbreak in Ontario now. It's come supposedly from Pakistan. And it's not
yeah, sure. Stay there. We'll be right back. Meanwhile, the UN just got caught again shooting kids up with polio.